Hi everyone, today I'm going to show you how to build a web application that uses OpenAI to turn drawings into photos. We're going to build the entire app from the front end to the back end using Python. We're going to build the app using Anvil, which is a platform for building full stack web applications entirely in Python. Let's get started. This is what our app will look like when it's finished. So we can upload an image of something, and then we can click this Turn into Photo button, which will call the OpenAI Images API and generate us a photorealistic version, which we can download onto our machine, and we can see it here. So it's a pretty simple app. We're going to build it all with Anvil and OpenAI. So we are going to build our front end using Anvil's drag and drop interface. Then we will go get an API key from OpenAI, which we'll use for our back end, which we'll also build in Anvil. And once we've called the OpenAI Images API and it's generated us an image, we'll pass that back to our front end, display it, and add the functionality to be able to download it. When we're done, we'll be able to deploy this app to the web instantly using Anvil's cloud servers. So it'll be really quick and easy to put it on the web and share it with people. So the first thing we need to do is to go into Anvil. So if you don't have an account already, you can create one for free. If you do have an account, then you need to log in. I already have this tab, so I'm just going to go here. I'm going to create a new app. Under the Advanced tab, I'm going to choose New M3. It's just a bit more modern, nicer theme. I'm going to choose this blank panel form. Basically, we don't really need a layout for this app. It's quite simple, so blank panel works for us. So now we have the form editor open, and this is where we can drag and drop components onto our page to build our UI. So I'm first going to rename this form. So I'm just going to rename it to main form. And while I'm at it, I'm also going to rename the app. So just click on that OpenAI photo generator. That should work. Okay. Now we can build the basics of the front end. So the first thing I want to add is I'm going to add a card. So I'm going to come over here to the toolbox where the components are, add a card, and then I'm actually going to add a column panel inside there. So that makes it a little bit easier to lay out our components. And now we need something so that the user can upload an image. So that's what a file loader is for. So I'm just going to come in here to the toolbox, file loader. There it is. Add that inside the column panel. I'm going to center align it by clicking this button here. And then in the properties panel, I'm going to set the appearance to be filled to make it a little bit bolder. And scrolling down, there's this file types property. If you hover over it, it will show you a little bit more information. So this is how we can tell the file loader what types of files we want to accept. So we want images. So we're going to type in image/star, and then that will only allow the user to upload images. So the next thing we need is an image component so that we can actually display the file that the user uploads. So I'll just drag that onto the card. And all these components that we have on this form, these are all Python objects, and we'll see in a little bit how we can interact with them in code. But this image defaults to the name image1, which isn't that helpful. So I'm going to just rename it to uploaded image. And I'm going to toggle the visibility so that it's invisible. We don't want to see it until we actually have an image that's uploaded. And then I also am going to change the display mode to fill with. You can play around with this. I just found that looked a little bit better for our purposes. Now we also need a button, and I'm going to drag this into the column panel, which I realized that image is not in the column panel, so just drag that in there. So I'm clicking on this button. Actually, if you go here into the components at the bottom, it's a really good way to see. You can see everything that's on your page, but it's also a good way to see if components are nested properly. So we can see that everything is in the column panel, so it's good now. Okay, sorry, going back to this button, I'm going to center align it. I'm going to change its Python name to generate button, because this is the button we're going to click to generate the photo. Change its text to turn into photo. And then I'm also going to make it invisible because we don't want it available until we have an image that's been uploaded. And now we need another image. So I'm just going to add that. And that one will hold our output image. So just naming it that. Okay, make it invisible as well. Let's now write some code so that when an image is uploaded, it will get displayed on the input image and the generate button will be visible. So if we click on the file loader, we can click this on change event button, and that will automatically open up the code editor for us and create a function. So this function will run whenever there's been a change to the file loader. And so we can see it has this handle decorator. So this is just an event handler. It's the first thing in the decorator is the component that will be raising this event handler and the event that will raise it. So we have file loader change. And so in this function, what we want to do is we want to say if there's been a file added, we will set the source of the input image to be that file, that image. And then we will make the generate button visible as well. Okay, we can now test this out. So if we click the green run button at the top, then that will run our app in a debug environment. So I'll click this file upload, click my cat drawing, open, and then it's displayed there, and we can see that the turn into photo button is visible as well. Okay, so let's stop that. So now we want to make this generate button work. So what we want to do, although I just realized that this output image doesn't have the same, so now making them both fill with the same display mode. Okay, so this generate button, we want it to call the OpenAI Images API to take our uploaded image and turn it into something photorealistic. And we need a OpenAI key to do that. So if you don't already have an OpenAI account, you'll need to create one. I have my account already open here on the billing tab. And the reason for that is that you will need credits in order to use use the Images API. And so you can add to credit balance. And I have just the $5 is the minimum that you can add. That's what I've added, and it's more than enough for building and testing this app. So the other thing that you need to do is verify your account in order to use the Images API. So if you go into the General tab, so you should have the option to verify your account, which I have not verified mine. And when I first was trying to do this option wasn't available to me, but it just came later, so I don't know what that's about. You might have to wait. I'm going to be using a different account that's already verified, but you will have to go through the verification process to use the Images API. The next thing we need is an API key. So over here in API keys, you can create a new secret key, and then you can name it something. And once you've generated that, you'll need to copy it to your clipboard because we're going to paste it into Anvil. So I'm going to get my key. I already have a key that has been verified. I'm going to go get that, and I'm going to not show you what I'm doing. So I will cut back to this screen when I get my API key. Okay, my API key is copied to my clipboard. I'm going to go back to the Anvil app, clicking this blue plus button and going to app secrets. I'm going to add this, there it is, app secret service. Creating a new secret. I'm going to call it OpenAI key. Actually, OpenAI API key I think might be better. Okay. Then I'm going to set the value to the API key that I have saved in my clipboard, which is blurred out for security. So you can store secrets and API keys and other encrypted information in Anvil using app secrets. So everything we store here will be encrypted. We can access it from our server module, but we can also be sure that none of our users will be able to see this. So this is why we're using this for our OpenAI key, because we don't want people to be using our account and using all the credits that we've added. So next thing we need to do is actually install the OpenAI package. So if we go to app, settings, and then Python version, so it should already be on Python 3.10. If you change the base package to machine learning, that will pre-install some things that we need. And then we can just add the OpenAI package, leave the version blank, and add that, and it should build pretty quickly. Now we want to add a server module, which is where we're actually going to be calling the OpenAI package. So just add a server module in app. I just went to app to get there. Just going to delete this code. And actually what I'm going to do is copy and paste the code that's in the OpenAI documentation. So I will put a link in the description to this page, and I'm just going to copy, I'm going to copy this code that's here, showing us how to use the edit function in the Images API. I'm just going to paste this here. So we're going to need to make some modifications for this before it will work in Anvil. The first thing we need to do is to actually add our API key. So in this OpenAI object, we can add API key equals Anvil.secrets, dot get, what is it? Yep, get secret, and then it will autocomplete for us. So there's our secret. So now we have our API key added. So Anvil's server modules don't run top to bottom like a normal Python script. So we need to turn our code into functions so we can actually call it from the front end. So I'm going to do that now. I'm just going to create a function called generate image, and then we'll pass in our input image into that. And then I'm just going to indent all of this code so that it is within the function. Okay, the next thing we can do is get rid of this prompt. So we're going to hard code our own prompt in here. And so I'm just going to change this to be turn the drawing into a photorealistic version. And I misspelled photorealistic. Okay, so as you can see from the OpenAI code, we need a path for the image in order to use it. So we can do that in Anvil with a temp file. So with anvil.media.temp file, and I'll put the input image into there as temp path. Okay, so we can indent this code in the with block, and then OpenAI is going to check the MIME type of our image by checking the file path, if it's .png, .jpeg, etc. Our temp path has a MIME type, it just doesn't have an extension on the end like that, so we have to manually add it. It took me a long time to figure out this was going on. So I'm just going to import MIME types at the top and import OS. These are both in the Python standard library. And inside the generate image function, then I'm going to get the MIME type from our input image. MIME type equals input image dot, I think content type is what we want. So that's part of Anvil. So input image has that built in. Extension equals MIME type. MIME types, I mean, yes, extension. And then passing in the MIME type into that. Excellent. So now within the with block, we can change the temporary path to be one that has the correct extension added to it. So new path will be equal to the temp path plus the extension. And then we need to rename the temp path with the new path. And then we don't need all of these images. We're only using one. So let's delete the bottom three here and then change that string, the bodylotion.png. We will change all of that into the new path that we have. So new path. Okay, so now we can get rid of this with block. So we can actually create a media object ourselves instead of using this context handler. So media objects are just how Anvil handles binary data. So I'm just going to create an image variable, anvil.media, blob media, and then we can set the content type. So we will just make it into a JPEG equals text/JPEG. And then we can set the content to be the image bytes, which is from the code that we copied from OpenAI. And then we'll set a name for it. I'm just going to make mine AI image to be simple, but you can name it whatever you like. And then we can I'm going to rename this to match output, just to match how we've done the other one, output in AMG. Okay, now we can get rid of this with block. The next thing we want to do is make this a background task. So when we call the OpenAI images API, it will take a while to run and we don't want our server to hang. So we're going to run this in the background. So I can add this anvil.server.background task decorator. And then we can make another function to actually launch the background task. So if I make a function called launch bg task, pass in the input image as well, because we need to pass that into our background task. And then in here, we'll launch the background task. I'm actually going to store it in a variable called task. And that way we can pass that to the front end and we can get some information from it, like whether the task is completed. So anvil.server.launch background task, generate image. It should all autocomplete and put the input image in there. And we'll return this task object so that we can check if it's completed on the front end. And I just need to add this anvil.server.callable decorator to that function so that we can call it from the front end of our code. So we can't actually return a media object from a background task, but we can store the generated image in a data table. So that's what we're going to do. So if we add a data table to our app, then we can, I don't know why I'm in here. That's not where it is. Okay, data, sorry. Then we can add a new table, and this is where we'll store the results of the image generating. So if I just add that, I'll name it tasks. And we want a column for the image that we're going to generate, and I'll make that a media type. And then we want another column for the task ID, which will be a text type. Okay, so now we need to go back to the server module, and in the generate image function, we need to actually add a row to the data table once the image has been generated. So within the generate image function, I'll get the task ID, anvil.server.context.background task ID. So that gives us our task ID. And then at the bottom of this function, after we've generated the image, we will create a row. So row equals, so we use the app tables API to get to our table, apptables.tasks, add row, image equals the output image, and then the task ID equals our task ID. Okay, now we need to actually return the result and then launch this background task whenever the generate button has been clicked. So let's go back to our main form, click on the generate button, click the on-click event. So this is going to, again, create a function for us that will run when the click event is fired. So I'm just going to make it fully code. And then in here, I'm going to remember our function returns a task object. So I'm going to set self.task equals anvil.server.call. That's how we call server functions, and it's going to autocomplete for us at launch background task. And we're going to pass in the file. So that is the self.file loader file. We also want to disable the generate button. So I'm going to set that to false. And that way we can't keep clicking the button while the process is running. We also want to add a indication that something's running. So I'm going to add a linear progress indicator. So I just add that onto my column panel, and that'll just indicate to the user that something has been running. So we'll make that invisible to start. And then back in the generate button, I'm just going to do self.linear progress indicator visible equals true. So we need a way to check if the background task has finished. So we need to poll the server, basically, check if that row has been created. So we're going to use a timer to do that. So I'm just going to add that to the page. It's an invisible component. You can add it anywhere. Timers have an interval property. This is how often they tick. And it's set to half a second right now. I'm just going to set that to 0 so that the timer won't tick automatically. I'm going to set up a tick event. So this function will run every time the timer is ticked. Every time the timer ticks. So right now that's not at all until we set the interval. So what we want to happen when the timer ticks is we want to check if task.is completed. So if the background task has completed, then what we're going to want to do is we're going to set the output image source to the return value of the task. So we can do self.task.get return value, and that's our row from the data table. That's what we're returning. And the column that we want to get from that is the image column. So we can do brackets image there to get that. And we also want to set the progress indicator to be not visible anymore. And we also need to make the self.output image .visible as well, because we started that out invisible. And we'll make the generate button enabled again. Okay, so now we need to start the timer ticking when the generate button is clicked. So I'll just come in here, self.timer1.interval. So I'll set that to be 0.5, so that's half a second. So it will poll the server every half second, and then when it's ticking, it will run this function. And so we also want to stop it, so set the interval to 0 if the task is completed so that it will stop ticking. And this will display a loading spinner while it's running. So we can actually do with anvil.server.no loading indicator. And that will then run this without the spinner popping up every time it's ticking. Okay, so put that within there. And we're going to add another button to our front end. This is so that we can download the image. So I'm just going to add that there, center line it, name it download button. Change the text on it to download, and I'm going to come in here. I'm going to make it tonal just so it's not as important looking, and then add a download icon in there. Okay, and then we actually don't want this to be visible yet, so I'm going to come in here and toggle it invisible. And then we want to set up a click event for it. So clicking on click event brings up our code. We can do anvil.media .download and then pass in the output image source. We're going to import anvil.media at the top. That's why that wasn't auto-completing. Okay, so we also need to make the download button visible when the task is finished. So in self.task is completed, we'll do self.download button visible equals true. And now we should be done. So we can run our app and upload a file. Upload my cat, open. There it is. I will click the turn into photo button, and this should call, okay, I didn't import anvil.media in the server module, so just click that. And we're getting all these errors because our timer is still ticking. Import anvil.media. If we were making this robust, we'd probably stop that timer ticking if we get an error. Okay, let's try it again. Upload the cat, turn into photo. So this is going to take some time to run. OpenAI takes a while to generate the image, so I'm just going to cut back here when it's finished running. Okay, and there it's worked. There it's generated, and we can download it. There it is, and I'm going to see if it's different than the other one. Yeah, oh yeah, it is different. Cool. Okay, so now we can publish our app to the web. So if we stop running it, we click the publish button, publish this app. We have a URL that's automatically been generated for us, which we can go to. It's running live. This is our same app. I'll upload a file. I'm not going to generate it because it will take too long, but it will work. It is the same app running. I can also come here and change the URL if I wanted to. I could switch to a private link, or you can add a custom domain if you have one. So we've just built an app that generates photos from images using OpenAI and Anvil. There's a lot more that you can do in Anvil. We could make this app a lot more robust by adding user authentication, which is built in Anvil. We also have a Stripe integration, so you could add the option to pay so that users can pay for credits. Anvil makes all of this really easy and Pythonic. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. Please subscribe to see more Anvil related content and let us know what you think in the comments. Also, let us know if there's any other tutorials you'd like to see.